Hello and welcome back to a FIFA 23 team guide, where I'll be running through the Leicester City squad, letting you know the basics about the team and suggesting some realistic improvements to help you enjoy your FIFA 23 career mode save. I think Leicester are a super fun save. In real life they're struggling because of the amount of money they've spent on players who haven't quite worked out, and you can see this in the way their squad looks in FIFA. Currently playing a 4-1-4-1 formation, you've got players like Jamie Vardy at 36 years old playing up front for you still, and then you've got people like Tielemans, who's obviously good enough for any team in the Premier League, but then you've got players like Daniel Amati, who's nowhere near good enough for the level Leicester play at. Let's have a look at every single position. I'll give you a rundown of if you should keep them, if you should sign a replacement, or if you should develop them for every single position. So starting in goal, recently Leicester got rid of their big goalkeeper Kasper Schmeichel. He's now gone off to play in France, so they're left with Ward, Iverson and Smithies to battle it out for the goalkeeper shirt. In my opinion, Ward is the best, but none of them are really Premier League level in real life. On FIFA as well, I think this is reflected, with Ward being the best at just 75 overall. No matter what you want to do with the rest of the squad, I really do recommend you sign a goalkeeper, and I'll give you some good suggestions at the end of this video, so stick around if you're interested in getting a new goalkeeper. In front of your new goalkeeper, you'll probably be playing Johnny Evans and Kaglar Sionchu. These are two decent options. Johnny Evans doesn't really have the pace he used to have, and the only other backup is Yannick Vestergaard, who's not a really great option here either. Wout Faes is another option here. I'm not sure if he's quite ready for the Premier League yet, but I think if you develop him, make sure he's playing instead of Johnny Evans quite a lot of the time, you possibly could have a new Fofana on your hands. Fullback is a position that is really strong at Leicester City. You've got Pereira on the right, who's one of the best right backs in the entire league at 83 rated, and on the left you have Castagne, you've got Thomas as well, and you've of course got James Justin, who can play right and left back. It's possible you might want another right-footed right back, but I don't think this is an area you really need to strengthen like centre back and goalkeeper were, so we're going to move straight on to the defensive midfield. So defensive midfield, you have a couple of options here. You've got Samara, you've got Mendy. They're both decent options. They're both physical, fairly fast, good at the ball and good at tackling, so it's not really an area you do need to focus on as well. In front of the defensive midfielder, of course, you have two centre midfielders. Recently, they've been playing Yuri Tielemans on the right and Keenan Dewsbury Hall on the left. Now, I don't really think Dewsbury Hall is actually that great in real life, although I do think he's got a ton of potential, so he's definitely worth developing if you're interested in bringing through a few more youth players from Leicester. If you're interested in improving the squad really quickly, this is definitely an area you can look at because there's a ton of affordable options here if you're not loyal to Keenan Dewsbury Hall. On the left side, you have another youth player in Harvey Barnes, who's been at Leicester since the year 2007. He's a good option. I think he's potentially going to the England squad in the next couple of years, so if you can develop him here, I can definitely see him reaching 83, 84, maybe even an 85. He's a good option. I would keep him around, and I think he's got pretty good and pretty effective FIFA stats on the left. On the right, you've got Mark Albrighton, who possibly could be better. He's a bit old now, he's never had too much pace, and of course he is a bit of a relic from winning the league a couple of years ago. But you've also got Ayoze Perez, who's more of a winger, but he can definitely play at right midfield. I would potentially say this is another area you can strengthen as Leicester, unless you want to maybe retrain someone like Maddison as a right winger, because you're not really using his attacking mid performance in this formation, or maybe you could do something like Daka on the wing, or Iheanacho eventually. Up front, you've got these two last players I just mentioned, Daka, Iheanacho. You've also got Jamie Vardy, who of course is absolutely a Leicester legend. He's still primed to score you 20 to 30 goals if you use him effectively on FIFA. He's got decent pace still, around 80 to 85 pace. He's also got really good finishing for a player of his age. At 36 years old, he's probably going to retire within 1 or 2 seasons. But if you can keep his ability above 80 rated, he will keep scoring goals. What you might need to do is start developing Iheanacho or Daka so that they are ready for when he does retire and you don't have to go out and spend big on a new option. But I think keeping Jamie Vardy up front is definitely the smart option in the short term. So you can see that the Leicester City squad is in kind of total need of a rebuild. There's not a huge amount of young talent coming through. A couple of your big names already want to leave or are on really short contracts like Yuri Tielemans, and people like Kasper Schmeichel, who were so important to Leicester being a great team in the Premier League, have now left the club. So the challenge really is to try and afford a new rebuild while trying to keep the debt down, because Leicester really are struggling with financial fair play in real life. My challenge if you're doing this save is to try and rebuild the entire squad while never spending more than you bring in on player signings. You've got a couple to start off with who you can sell for big bucks. Tielemans you can probably get around 50 million for. Even at his age, Jamie Vardy's still worth a fair amount. Maddison's wanted by basically every Premier League team, and Pereira would fit in at almost any Premier League team as well. So you can easily raise a ton of money for these to spend on your rebuild. Now, we're going to talk about some realistic improvements in just a second, but I really do think having a youth academy is also an important part of the Leicester City way. Spending small money on young or upcoming players is something Leicester have always done, and they've gone one step further by buying one of the best training facilities in the entire world. I know all about it, I live very close to it in real life, and it's really impressive. Every time I drive past it, I think I'm so jealous that my team, Nottingham Forest, doesn't have something like that. So building a really strong youth academy is another big part of playing a Leicester City save. But now let's move on to some realistic signings, shall we? So starting off in goal, I think you're going to need a very good long-term goalkeeper when you're playing as Leicester City. I recommend you have a look at trying to either loan in or permanently buy Andre Lunin from Real Madrid. Now this guy starts off around the same level as someone like Ward, but what he does have is a ton of potential. He's 1m92, at 22 years old, the Ukrainian international has potential to be Leicester City's goalkeeper for the rest of your save if you can manage to sign him straight away. I do recommend you have a look at him, and you can also get him for fairly cheap, around 10 to 15 million pounds if you do it straight away in your career mode. Next up is the centre-back position that I mentioned earlier. So Fofana left a big hole that I don't think Johnny Evans and Soyuncu can fill, so I'm going to recommend you go out and have a look at Mohamed Simakan at RB Leipzig. So this guy has good potential. He's 6'2" as well, so quite tall for a centre-back, but he can also play at right-back, providing some good cover to Pereira, who's the only first choice right back in your entire team. With some good pace, he's not very good going forwards as a fullback, but at centre back he's going to be more than a match for almost any Premier League striker. So again, he's another one to check out, and you can get him for around 20 to 30 million pounds depending on how soon you go for him. The last position I'm going to suggest an improvement for is on the right wing, and I'm going to recommend you go for Ismaila Sarr, who plays for Watford. This guy has an insane amount of pace. No joke, he's 95 sprint speed. This guy is the total opposite of Mark Albrighton. Of course, his crossing is nowhere near as good. That's the trade-off you go for going for a totally different winger. However, what he can do is he's pretty good at long shots, which is something Albrighton isn't actually all that great at doing on FIFA. So if you want a total different option, you could go for Ismaila Sarr. If you want to try and do one over your rivals as well, why not go for Brennan Johnson at Nottingham Forest? He was linked with Leicester in the past when Leicester had a bit more cash, so why not see if you can wrestle him from the red side of the Midlands to the blue side of the East Midlands. Now, I'm sure you probably can tell I'm not a Leicester City fan in real life, so if I've made any mistakes and you're a Leicester City fan and you're about to comment everything in this video was wrong, please do leave comments that can correct me, because they're super helpful, not only for me, but for everyone who's watched this video and thinks that I'm spot on with every single suggestion. But if you've got any transfer suggestions from Leicester, if you just support the club, or if your friend does, let me know in the comments below. Join the Discord if you want to chat about your Leicester City career mode, and thank you all for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more like this for FIFA 23, and like the video if you enjoyed it. Thank you, and goodbye.